To the most incredible audience in the world, your comments have been nothing short of breathtaking. Every word you leave beneath these stories reminds us why we do this. You are the heartbeat of Elyorastories. Thank you. Truly. Your encouragement keeps the pen moving and the stories alive. The vineyard did not warn her. That was the thing about Napa Valley in October. It wore its beauty like armor, all golden light and rows of vines so perfectly arranged they looked curated by someone who needed the world to obey. Rudo had walked into controlled spaces before. Boardrooms. Courtrooms. Conversations designed to reduce her. But the moment she stepped through the iron gate of the CO estate and felt a gaze settle on her from across the courtyard, steady, unrushed, deliberate as a blade being drawn slowly from its sheath, she understood that this vineyard, and the man standing at the center of it, were something else entirely. He did not move toward her. He didn't have to. And somehow, that stillness was the most dangerous thing she'd ever encountered. What happens when a woman built to resist finds herself already inside the web before she ever saw the silk? Welcome back to Elyorastories. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and turn on post notifications. Your support means everything. Now, enjoy the story. Research shows that prolonged eye contact between two people can trigger the same neurological response as falling in love. In this story, Rim never chases, he simply looks. And that look rewires everything. Have you ever been undone by someone's silence? Tell us in the comments. The contract was straightforward, at least on paper. Rudo had built her consulting firm from a single laptop and a borrowed office in Oakland, and 5 years later, Chisamba and Associates was the kind of name that made winery owners in Napa stop their calls to take meetings. She specialized in operational restructuring, cutting waste, rebuilding supply chains, making vineyards profitable without stripping their identity. It was precise, clinical work, and she was exceptional at it. The CO estate had called her twice before she agreed. She didn't chase clients. She evaluated them. She arrived on a Tuesday morning in a cream blazer and dark trousers, her natural hair pinned back with exactly 2 loose coils framing her face, a choice, always a choice. Her leather portfolio under one arm and her stride carrying the particular confidence of a woman who had learned to take up space in rooms that weren't built for her. The estate manager, a polite older man named Gerald, met her at the gate. He was mid-sentence about harvest projections when Rudo noticed him. Rim CO stood at the far end of the courtyard near a cluster of oak barrels, speaking quietly to 2 men in linen shirts. He was taller than she expected from the file photo, broad through the shoulders in a way that his dark shirt made no effort to conceal, sharp jawline set in a composed expression, dark hair pushed slightly back. He looked like someone who had never needed to raise his voice to command a room. The kind of stillness that wasn't passivity, but precision. He was already looking at her. Not the glance a person gives a newcomer. Not curiosity or professional assessment. He was looking at her the way you look at something you have been waiting for without knowing you were waiting. Rudo held his gaze for exactly 2 seconds, measured, unhurried, then turned her attention back to Gerald as if nothing had happened. She was here to work. That was all. Gerald led her through the main hall into a glass-walled conference room overlooking the East Vineyard. The estate was stunning. She would give it that vaulted ceilings, exposed stone, the kind of old-world architecture that Americans with new money tried to replicate and never quite managed. This was the real thing. Generations of it. She was reviewing her intake notes when the door opened without a knock. Rim CO entered the room the way he occupied the courtyard, without announcement, without apology. He carried a single glass of water, set it on the table in front of her without a word, then took the seat across from her and folded his hands on the table. Miss Chisamba. His accent was a precise mixture of American education and Korean inflection, each syllable clean. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the water I didn't ask for, she said, and met his eyes. Something moved across his expression. Not offense. Something quieter than that. Closer to interest. I tend to notice when people haven't been offered things they need, he said. I don't need it. No, he agreed, and the word was so calm it almost felt like a compliment. But I offered it anyway. She clicked her pen. Let's talk about your Eastern distribution chain. He let her redirect him without resistance, which she noted. Men who controlled things and Rim's CEO, she had learned from 3 weeks of research, controlled a great deal, usually pushed back against redirection. He didn't. He answered her questions with the same calm precision he apparently applied to everything, and she spent 90 minutes building her initial picture of the estate's operational fractures. He watched her the entire time. Not intrusively. Not in the way that made her want to stand up and leave. But with a quality of attention that felt almost physical, like the room's temperature shifted slightly when his focus settled on her. She noticed it the way you notice a change in weather. You don't stop walking, but you know the sky has changed. When the meeting ended, he walked her to the door himself. "Same time Thursday?" he asked. "I'll need access to the warehouse logs before Thursday," she said. "Full access. No filtered copies." He nodded slowly, studying her. "Most consultants are satisfied with the summary reports." "I'm not most consultants." "No," he said quietly, and again, that tone careful, private, as though he were filing something away. "You're not." She drove back to her rental in Yountville, telling herself that the evening light on the hills was what made her pulse feel strange. It had nothing to do with the man who had looked at her like she was the most interesting problem he had ever decided to solve. By Thursday, the warehouse logs were waiting on a secure drive on the conference table. Unfiltered, as she'd requested. Every transaction, every shipment delay, every internal memo from the past 4 years. Rim was not in the building when she arrived. Gerald told her he had flown to San Francisco that morning for meetings. She told herself the absence of weight in the room was simply what a room felt like when it wasn't overcrowded. She worked for 6 hours, stopping only once for the coffee that appeared at her elbow sometime around noon, left, she discovered, by a quiet assistant who told her Mr. CEO had called ahead to ensure she had what she needed. She stared at the coffee cup for a moment longer than was professional. He returned that evening, just as she was packing her portfolio. She heard his voice in the hallway before she heard his footsteps, low, rapid Korean shifting into English as he ended a call. He pushed open the conference room door and stopped when he saw her still there. "You stayed late," he said. "Your 2021 distribution agreement has 3 contractual gaps that have been costing you roughly $40,000 annually. I needed to confirm them twice before I brought them to you." He crossed to the table and looked at the pages she'd flagged. His arm brushed the edge of her portfolio as he leaned in, and she caught barely, professionally, the faint scent of cedar and something clean beneath it. "You confirmed them twice," he said. "Errors are expensive." He looked up from the page. The distance between them, standing at the corner of the table, was not large. "So is second-guessing people who are trying to do their jobs," he said. "I gave you full access because you asked. I don't do that with people I'm uncertain about." She looked at him directly. "What made you certain about me?" He considered the question. He had the habit, she was beginning to notice, of taking questions seriously, even ones that were rhetorical. "You looked at me for exactly 2 seconds on Tuesday," he said. "Not long enough to perform. Not short enough to hide. You were deciding." She had no response to that. It was too precise. "Good night, Mr. CEO," she said, and picked up her portfolio. "Rim," he said, when she was at the door. She paused. "If you're going to find every fracture in my operation, you can use my name." She didn't turn around. But her grip on the portfolio shifted just slightly, the leather pressing into her palm. "Good night, Rim." The following week arrived with the particular cruelty of proximity. Her work required daily presence on the estate, walking the production floor, interviewing staff, mapping the logistical flow of a business that moved millions of bottles of wine through 3 continents. She was deep in it, deep in the numbers, the systems, the tangled legacy of decisions made before her arrival. Rim was there. Every day. Not hovering, not interfering, but present in the way that weather is present, shaping the atmosphere of every room without announcing itself. She caught herself adjusting things when she knew he would be nearby. The angle of her laptop. The pace of her walk through the barrel room. She hated herself for it quietly, efficiently, and moved on. He said almost nothing personal. He asked about her findings. He answered her questions about the business with rare completeness, trusting her with details she suspected he didn't share easily. He sent the morning coffee without comment. Once, when it rained unexpectedly and she had walked out to the vineyard without a jacket, a coat appeared over the back of her chair when she returned, dark wool, too large, folded with deliberate neatness. She left it there. He didn't mention it. But the next morning when she arrived, there was a coat stand near the conference room entrance that hadn't been there the day before. She understood, with alarming clarity, that Rimsio did not say things with words that he could say with action. And she understood, with equal alarm, that she had started to listen. The fracture came from outside. His name was Daniel Voss, a regional wine distributor from Sacramento who had worked with the estate years before Rudo's contract and seemed to believe that his history with the business entitled him to a certain familiarity with anyone inside it. He arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, handsome in the easy, self-satisfied way of men who had never been told no persuasively enough, and he noticed Rudo immediately. She was in the tasting room with 2 production staff, reviewing the output logs from the fall harvest. Voss walked in with Gerald and introduced himself with a handshake that lasted a beat longer than necessary. "You're the consultant," he said, smiling. "They didn't mention you'd be," he gestured loosely at her, as if the rest of the sentence was self-explanatory, like this. She withdrew her hand. "I'm mid-review. Can I help you?" "I'd love to take you to lunch," he said, with the confidence of someone accustomed to that offer landing well. "I know this valley better than anyone. Could be useful for your work." "My work is going well," she said pleasantly. "Thank you." He laughed, undeterred, and leaned one elbow on the table beside her. "Come on. One lunch. I'm not a bad resource." The door to the tasting room opened. Rimsio walked in and took in the tableau in under a second, Voss leaning over Rudo's workspace, Rudo's spine straight and expression politely glacial. Something shifted in Rim's face. Not a dramatic shift. A quieting. The way a room goes silent before something precise happens. "Daniel," he said, and his voice had a texture in it that Rudo had not heard before. Voss straightened immediately. "Rim. Didn't know you were on site today." "I live here," Rim said. He walked to the table, positioned himself at Rudo's side, not close enough to be theatrical, just close enough to be unambiguous, and picked up one of the harvest reports she'd been reviewing, as if he had a reason to be exactly where he was. "Miss Chisamba is in a review session," he said, to Voss. "Gerald will get you set up in the East office. We'll talk distribution contracts at 3. Voss left. He left quickly. The production staff found reasons to step out. And then it was only the 2 of them in the tasting room, September light pooling through the long windows, and Rim still holding her harvest report, looking at it without reading it. "He was just being irritating," Rudo said. "I know. I was handling it. I know that too." She looked at the side of his face. "Then why?" "Because," he said, and set the report down, turning to look at her with that settled, unhurried gaze that she was starting to understand was his most honest expression. "I didn't want to watch you handle it." The silence between them had a texture. It had weight. She picked up her pen and looked back at her notes. Her hand was steady. Her pulse was not. "The harvest yields on Block 7 are down 12%, she said. He breathed once, quietly, and sat down across from her. "Walk me through it," he said. She did. And neither of them mentioned what had just happened in the room. But something had shifted between the tasting notes and the window light. In the space between his stillness and her refusal to move, something had been named without language, and both of them felt the weight of it settling like sediment at the bottom of something very deep. Quick pause. If this story has you hooked, tap like and drop your thoughts below. Now, back to the story. It was Gerald who let something slip at the end of Rudo's second week. She was reviewing invoices in the corridor when Gerald passed with a stack of folders and mentioned, offhandedly, that Mr. Sio had rescheduled his Seoul trip twice. She looked up. He was supposed to travel? Gerald seemed to realize he'd said too much. Just a board meeting. He'll go eventually. She said nothing. But that evening, after the estate had gone quiet, she stood at the window of her rental and thought about a man who postponed flights to Seoul without explanation. In the same week, he had planted himself beside her in a tasting room like a wall. She thought about the coat stand. She thought about the coffee. She thought about the way he had said, "I didn't want to watch you handle it," with the precise tone of someone telling the truth so cleanly that it embarrassed them both. Rudo Chisamba had spent a significant portion of her adult life being careful. Careful about hope. Careful about the particular kind of hunger that lived in the space between professionalism and want. She had learned slowly, the way you learn things that cost you, that some men looked at you with interest until you stopped being interesting, and some men looked at you with intent until you needed them, and then the ground shifted. She didn't know yet what kind of man Rim Seo was. But she was beginning to understand that she wanted to. The third week changed the weather. Not the Napa weather, that remained its usual gold and blue conspiracy of beauty, but the weather between them. The invisible atmospheric pressure that had been building since Tuesday of the first week, since 2 seconds of eye contact in a sunlit courtyard, shifted into something that neither of them could any longer pretend was simply professional proximity. It started with the argument. Rudo had completed her preliminary audit and prepared a 40-page restructuring proposal. She presented it in the main conference room with 3 of RIM's senior managers present, a phased operational overhaul that would eliminate redundancies, renegotiate 4 supplier contracts, and increase net margins by an estimated 22% over 18 months. It was her best work. She knew it was her best work the way an athlete knows when the form is perfect, not with pride, but with the quiet certainty of something executed exactly right. Rim listened without interrupting. His managers asked questions. She answered them. Then Rim said calmly, "I'm not implementing Phase 3. She looked at him. Phase 3 accounts for 60% of the projected gain. I understand that. Then you understand that without it, you're accepting a fraction of what this estate is capable of. I understand the numbers, Miss Chisamba." And the return to her surname landed in the room like a shift in key. Phase 3 requires consolidating our northern cellar staff. Those are 12 people who have worked this estate for over a decade. I won't reduce their positions to improve a margin percentage. She held her position. There are reallocation options within the proposal that move them into roles they didn't train for, in departments that don't need them. He was still calm. That was the infuriating thing. He didn't raise his voice. He simply became more precisely himself. The answer is no. His managers were very still. Rudo closed her portfolio. Then you hired a consultant to tell you what you already knew. I hired a consultant, he said, to find the fractures. I decide what to do with them. She looked at him for a long moment. His jaw was set. His eyes were direct. And beneath the authority, she could see it, because she was beginning to know how to read him, there was something that was not stubbornness. It was conviction. The kind that comes from deciding long ago what kind of person you intend to be and holding that line regardless of the cost. She breathed. I'll revise Phase 3, she said. I want 2 days. Take them, he said. And something in his expression briefly softened. The managers filed out. Rim remained, and she was gathering her materials when he spoke. The 12 people in the northern cellar, he said. 2 of them put their children through school on this estate's wages. 1 of them was here when my father was still alive. A pause. Numbers are not always the only language worth speaking. She looked at him. He was not explaining himself. He was letting her see something. There was a difference. I'll revise it, she said, quietly. It'll still be strong. I know it will, he said. And this time, the certainty in his voice was not about the proposal at all. She revised it in her rental, working through the night with the windows open and the valley air cold and clean against her neck. She rebuilt Phase 3 from the ground up, a rotating cross-training model that preserved every position while gradually increasing each cellar worker's operational range, creating redundancy through skill rather than reduction. It would take longer. The margin gain was smaller. It was also, she admitted to herself around 2 in the morning, a better plan. She submitted it at 6 a.m. and slept for 3 hours. At 9 a.m., a message from Rim's assistant. Mr. Seo has reviewed the revised proposal. He approves. He asks if you have dinner plans this evening. She stared at the message. She typed, that depends on whether dinner is a business meeting. The response came in 4 minutes. It is not. She set her phone face down on the table and sat with the particular sensation of a door she had been leaning against suddenly opening inward. She picked the phone back up. She typed, 7 o'clock. He took her to a small restaurant in Yountville that had no sign above the door and a host who knew his name. They sat at a corner table, and the meal arrived in quiet courses, and for the first half of the evening they talked about things that had nothing to do with the estate. He asked about Zimbabwe. Not the polished tourist version. He asked about Harare in the rainy season, about the specific quality of noise a market makes at midday, about what it felt like to build something far from where you were born. He asked like someone who was genuinely trying to understand the geography of a person. She asked about Seoul. He told her about his grandmother's apartment on the edge of Mapogu, about learning to make wine in a country that didn't drink much of it, about inheriting an estate he'd loved before he understood what it cost. "Your father built this?" she asked. "My father bought the land. I built what's on it." He turned his wine glass slowly. "There's a difference." "There is," she agreed. He looked at her. In the candlelight, the sharp lines of his face held something quieter, still composed, always composed, but with a warmth in it that she had only glimpsed in fragments before now. "You push back," he said. "Against me. Against the room. You don't adjust your position to make people comfortable." "Should I?" "No." A pause. "I find it," he seemed to choose carefully, "clarifying." "Clarifying," she repeated. "Most people in my position are surrounded by agreement. It becomes its own kind of blindness." He looked at her steadily. "You don't agree with me unless you mean it. Is that why you rescheduled Seoul twice?" The question landed. She hadn't planned to say it. It came from somewhere that had bypassed the careful architecture of her professional restraint, and she held her breath for half a second after it left her mouth. Rim was quiet. He set down his glass. "Gerald talks too much," he said, but there was no edge in it. "Rim." He looked at her, and she had said his name before, technically, but not like this. Not without armor around it. "Yes," he said simply. "That is why." The table between them felt suddenly insufficient. She held his gaze and felt the precise and terrifying sensation of two things becoming true at once, that she had been trying very hard not to want this, and that she had already failed. It was another 2 weeks before everything broke open. The catalyst arrived in the form of a woman named Sora Park. She flew in from New York on a Thursday, elegant, composed, Korean, and exactly the kind of woman the estate staff clearly expected to see on Rim's arm. She was a business contact. Rudo gathered from the scheduling notes she technically had no business reading, something to do with an investment partnership Rim had been developing for 2 years. But Sora moved through the estate with the ease of someone who had been there before, who laughed at the right moments and touched Rim's arm when she made a point, and the staff treated her with a warmth that suggested familiarity. Rudo told herself it was none of her business. She had a proposal to finalize. She had a job. She was a professional. She watched Sora and Rim walk through the barrel room from the window of the conference room and felt something in her chest that was entirely unprofessional. That evening, she booked a flight back to Oakland for Sunday. 3 days early. She told Gerald it was a scheduling conflict. She told herself it was self-preservation. The job was effectively done. Her deliverables were complete. Her final report was 90% written. She could finish it remotely. She could send it by email. She could put this vineyard and its perfectly composed, quietly devastating owner behind her like a chapter closed at its natural ending. She was packing her leather portfolio when Rim appeared in the conference room doorway. "Gerald says you're leaving Sunday. The bulk of my work is complete." She didn't stop packing. "You'll have the final report within the week." Rudo. He said her name the way she had said his at dinner, unguarded, without professional scaffolding around it. She stopped. "Sora Park is my investor," he said. "She is also my cousin's closest friend. She has been in a relationship with someone in New York for 3 years. Rudo was quiet. "I know what it looked like," he said. "I should have introduced you properly when she arrived." She turned. He was standing in the doorway with his arms at his sides, and he looked, for the first time since she had known him, uncertain. Not confused, not lost. Just standing at the edge of something with no guarantee of the landing. "You're not leaving because the work is done," he said. She wanted to disagree. She looked at him and found she couldn't. "I got careful," she said. "It's what I do." "I know." He crossed the room then, deliberate, unhurried, the same quality of movement that had defined him from the first courtyard to this moment. He stopped close enough that she could see the precise line of his jaw, the stillness in his eyes that she now understood was not distance, but depth. "I've watched you be careful for 6 weeks. You are extraordinarily good at it." "Rim." "I rescheduled Seoul twice," he said. "I put a coat stand outside a conference room. I revised dinner invitations 3 times before I sent one that didn't read like a board memo." He paused. "I am many things, Rudo. I am not subtle. But with you, I kept getting careful too. Because you made it clear from the first day that nothing about you is going to be taken. And I respected that. I still respect it." He exhaled once. "But I am done pretending. I simply find your operational instincts clarifying." The portfolio was still in her hands. She set it down. "I'm afraid," she said, and it cost her something to say it plainly, the way she knew it would. "Of what happens after? After the intensity settles. After I'm not new. Then I will make sure you are never not seen," he said. "Every day." Deliberately. She looked at him. The vineyard evening was pressing gold against the windows, and the room held the smell of oak and open sky, and Rudo Chisamba, who had built her life on precision and earned independence and the knowledge that she required nothing she could not provide herself, felt the careful structure she had spent 6 weeks reinforcing come apart at its foundation. Not violently. The way good things come apart, quietly and with relief. She didn't remember moving. But the space between them closed, and his hands found her face, careful, deliberate, the way he did everything, and the moment before his lips met hers held exactly the quality of a breath taken before something irrevocable. The vineyard light faded. The room held them. And whatever it was that had begun in a courtyard on a Tuesday morning, measured in 2 seconds of eye contact and the language of coat stands and morning coffee and a man who postponed flights, it arrived, finally, at its true beginning. She did not leave Sunday. She did not leave the following Sunday either. The final report was submitted, thorough, brilliant, the culmination of the best professional work of her career, and Rim implemented it with the completeness of a man who trusted what he had chosen. The estate's operational overhaul became a quiet revolution, its northern cellar staff retrained and thriving, its distribution margins climbing in the steady, undeniable way of something built on solid ground. But more than the estate changed. Rim flew to Seoul for his board meeting 6 weeks later and flew back in 4 days instead of 10, carrying, among his luggage, a small jade pendant he had found in an Insadong market that reminded him, he said, of the color of her earrings the first day they met. She wore it every day after that and said nothing about it to anyone, which was its own kind of declaration. She moved her consulting base to Napa by spring. Her firm grew. She took on clients across the valley. She refused to touch Rim's accounts professionally, which he understood without negotiation, and the distinction seemed to make him love her more clearly. He told her he loved her on an ordinary Tuesday. No ceremony, no manufactured moment. They were in the kitchen of the estate house, early morning, her portfolio open on the counter, his coffee half drunk, and he looked at her across the room the way he had looked at her across that first courtyard, settled, deliberate. As though he had already decided and said, "I love you." Like reporting a weather condition. Like informing her of something real. She crossed the kitchen, set her hand on his chest, and said, "I know. I love you too." Like confirming a fact they had both been working toward. He exhaled, and she felt the tension leave his body, this broad, composed, quietly powerful man who had been waiting, she realized, with more patience than certainty. He proposed 14 months later in the vineyard at harvest, with no audience, no performance, only the last light of October on the vines and a ring she later learned he had designed by a jeweler in Seoul from a description that included the words, "Like her, precise and remarkable." She said yes before he finished the sentence. They married in the spring under the old oak at the estate's northern edge, in a ceremony that was small and deliberate and exactly them, Gerald in the front row with eyes that had seen it coming from the second Tuesday. Her family flew from Harare and his from Seoul, and the 2 languages of their lives braided together in the afternoon air like something that had always been meant to coexist. She discovered she was pregnant on a Wednesday morning in early autumn, standing in the vineyard at dawn with the mist still low on the vines, and she told him that evening in the same kitchen where he had first told her he loved her. Rimsio, who had never once in 6 years of business flinched at a negotiation, who had sat across boardrooms and international conference tables without a flicker of visible emotion, pressed his forehead to hers and held her face in his hands and breathed like a man who had just been handed the most important thing he had ever been trusted with. "A Chisambasio," he said quietly. "Or a Sio Chisamba," she said. He smiled wide, unguarded, the rarest of his expressions, belonging only to her. "We'll negotiate." And somewhere in the vineyard, the vines held their fruit, and the valley held its light, and two people who had entered each other's worlds as a business arrangement found themselves, instead, in the only arrangement that had ever truly fit. Built on resistance and patience and morning coffee and coat stands and 2 seconds in a courtyard that became, somehow, everything. If this story pulled you in, comment your thoughts and stay subscribed, there's more coming.